The greatest comeback in football history, the Sam Darnold story. You know, every single April in this country, the National Football League sells us a fairy tale. Millions of us sit down in our living rooms. We turn on the NFL draft, we listen to the dramatic music, and we buy into this grand, glittering illusion. We watch the commissioner step up to the podium, announce a name, and we genuinely believe that a single, fresh-faced, 21-year-old kid can walk into a broken, deeply dysfunctional franchise and just fix it. Miraculously turn water into wine. We crave that savior narrative, right? We want the instant gratification. But ask anyone who is actually strapped on a helmet and played the game at the highest level. Out there on the cold grass, on Sundays, when the stadium is screaming and 300-pound defensive linemen are trying to take your head off, fairy tales get blindsided. To really understand the epic, sweeping, and honestly unbelievable career arc of Sam Darnold, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. Because long before the league labeled him a bust, and way before the media mercilessly turned him into a punchline, you had to look at the kid's bloodline. Sam wasn't just some guy who got lucky throwing a spiral football in the backyard. He inherited a literal athletic legacy. His grandfather was a man named Dick Hammer, and I'm not kidding when I say this man lived 5 elite athletic lives in one. Hammer was a starting guard on USC's 1954 Final Four basketball team, the last time the school ever made it that far. He went on to become a U.S. Olympic volleyball player, helping the Americans secure their very first Olympic volleyball victory in Tokyo in '64. He held junior college records in the javelin and the decathlon. He spent decades as a heroic firefighter, eventually becoming a captain in Los Angeles. And somewhere in between all of that, he moonlighted as an actor, playing a captain on the hit TV show Emergency, and famously serving as the literal face of American masculinity as the Marlboro Man in the 1970s. That is the towering genetic shadow Sam Darnold stepped into. And growing up in the sunny surf town of San Clemente, Sam was an absolute freak athlete way before he ever put his hand under center. He played baseball as a freshman. He split time between football and basketball. And honestly, if you talk to the locals, basketball might have been his best sport. He was a 2-time South Coast League MVP. He was a demon on the boards, and his coach openly told the press he could have easily played college hoops in the Pac-12. On the football field, he didn't even start at quarterback right away. He was out there catching passes at wide receiver and laying people out at linebacker. But as a sophomore, the starting quarterback goes down with a brutal injury mid-game. Sam steps in, throws a touchdown, runs in the game-winning 2-point conversion, and that was it. The switch flipped. He ended up breaking the school record, throwing 5 touchdowns in a single game twice. He becomes this highly touted 4-star dual-threat recruit, and he commits to the absolute royalty of West Coast college football, USC. But even at USC, under the bright lights of the Coliseum, things weren't just handed to him on a silver platter. Get this, the defensive coordinator at the time, Justin Wilcox, took one look at Sam's frame and athleticism, and initially wanted him to play linebacker. He makes Sam redshirt his 2015 freshman year, sitting squarely on the bench behind Cody Kessler and Max Brown. Going into 2016, he's still the backup. But USC stumbles out of the gate in disastrous fashion. They go 1-2. The season is slipping away, and the desperate coaching staff finally makes the switch to the kid from San Clemente. In his first career start on the road against a tough Utah team, he throws for 253 yards, runs for a gritty score, and almost pulls off a massive, dramatic comeback. And after that game, USC didn't lose again that entire season. With Sam at the helm, the Trojans turned into an absolute offensive buzzsaw. They averaged 37 points and over 500 yards a game. He finishes the year with over 3,000 passing yards, 31 total touchdowns, and shatters Todd Marinovich's legendary freshman touchdown record. He runs for 250 yards, the most by a Trojan QB in over 2 decades. And then comes the granddaddy of them all, the Rose Bowl, against Penn State. It's the first time USC is there in 8 years, and Sam delivers a pure, unadulterated masterpiece in one of the greatest college games ever played. He throws for 453 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, and racks up 473 total yards. All Rose Bowl records. He wins the Archie Griffin Award as college football's most valuable player to his team, doing it all as a redshirt freshman. Heading into 2017, the hype train is completely off the tracks. He's the preseason Heisman favorite, a surefire, locked-in top 5 draft pick. But if you watched closely, you could start to see the cracks forming in the armor. Through just 6 games of his sophomore campaign, he had already matched his interception total from the entire year before. He finishes that season with 13 picks. Across his final 20 college games, he threw 20 interceptions and lost 9 fumbles trying to play hero ball. So, yeah, he went an incredible 2-0 and 4 as a starter, but he threw 22 picks doing it. The NFL scouting report was set in stone. Limitless franchise upside, an absolute cannon for an arm, but extremely raw decision-making. Very little room for error. And man, the National Football League gave him absolutely zero room for error. Let's talk about the 2018 draft class for a second. It was legendary. You had Baker Mayfield, the swaggering Heisman winner; Josh Allen, the towering 6'5" freak with a rocket launcher attached to his shoulder; Josh Rosen, the polished, so-called pro-ready prospect; Lamar Jackson, the dynamic phenomenon out of Louisville. And right in the middle of this historic crop, the youngest of the bunch, barely 21 years old, Sam Darnold. The New York Jets were a franchise starved for relevance. They were so desperate they mortgaged their entire future. They traded 3 valuable second-round picks just to move up from 6 to 3 to get him. They hadn't drafted a quarterback that high since 1996. The pressure of the New York media market was placed squarely on his shoulders before he even unpacked his bags. When you give up that much draft capital, you don't ease a kid in. You don't let him hold a clipboard. Week 1, Monday Night Football, under the primetime lights on the road in Detroit. Sam takes the field as the youngest opening day starting quarterback since the AFL-NFL merger. First professional dropback, he rolls out to his right, panics a little bit, and throws a prayer back across his body into the middle of the field. And bam! Detroit's Quandre Diggs jumps the route. Pick 6. Intercepted and taken to the house on his very first NFL pass. The ultimate rookie nightmare broadcasted to the entire country. But strangely enough, he shook it right off. He didn't blink. He came back out, started attacking the secondary, and the Jets blew out the Lions 4-8-1-7. But that opening night, it was fool's gold. It was a mirage masking a deeply flawed football team. Once the season settled in, the brutal reality of the Jets' roster set in. He commits 4 brutal turnovers against Minnesota. He throws 4 interceptions in a single game against Miami. The team loses 6 straight games. At 21 years old, he's taking devastating hits behind a turnstile offensive line that no kid should ever have to take. He battles a painful foot injury that lingers all year. By the end of his rookie season, the stat line is a messy 17 touchdowns and 15 picks. Not a failure, but certainly not the Messiah New York was promised. By 2019, things are not getting any better. In fact, the walls are starting to close in. The offensive line is ranked dead last in the league in pressure rate allowed. The coaching staff is asking Sam to constantly bail them out of 3rd and long situations with a conservative, uninspired playbook. And then, the universe throws a curveball. He gets diagnosed with mononucleosis, an illness that completely drains your physical strength and energy, causing him to miss 3 critical games. He finally comes back in Week 6, drops a 338-yard bomb of a game, hits Robbie Anderson for a 92-yard touchdown, wins AFC Offensive Player of the Week, and you think to yourself, okay, maybe he's finally turning the corner. Maybe the talent is winning out. Then comes the game that almost ruined his entire life. The very next week, primetime Monday Night Football in the Meadowlands. Bill Belichick and the legendary New England Patriots defense come to town. From the opening snap, it is an absolute massacre. The Patriots are sending cover 0 blitzes. The pocket collapses instantly on every dropback. Darnold is constantly throwing off his back foot just to avoid being decapitated. By halftime, New York is down 24-0 and the offense is a smoldering crater. Sitting on the bench, battered, bruised, and completely overwhelmed, Darnold is trying to explain the chaos to his coaches. He was caught on a hot microphone confessing, "I'm seeing ghosts." Now, if you know football, you know this isn't some crazy mystical confession. It's a very real, very terrifying phenomenon. It means your internal clock is so profoundly sped up by the relentless pass rush that you start anticipating hits that aren't even there. You flinch at shadows. It was a moment of raw, terrifying honesty from a kid getting beaten to a pulp by a superior team. He finished that night with a career-low 86 passing yards, 4 interceptions, and a lost fumble in a humiliating 3-3-0 shutout. But the sports media, they didn't care about the X's and O's or the terrible offensive line. They took that quote, put it on a loop, and turned it into a vicious, inescapable national punchline. The narrative was carved in stone overnight. Sam Darnold is mentally broken. He's a bust. The 2200 season was just the final agonizing nail in the coffin. He's battling lingering shoulder injuries that wreck his throwing mechanics. He's literally getting sacked in the end zone for a safety. He gets sacked 23 times in just 12 starts. The Jets finish an abysmal 2-1-4, scoring fewer than 17 points a game, and the era is mercifully over. In April 2001, the Jets finally give up. They ship him down south to the Carolina Panthers for a handful of mid-round draft picks. On paper, it looks like the perfect lifeline, a top 1-0 defense to lean on, the ultimate safety valve in Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, an elite receiver in DJ Moore. The Panthers are so confident, they immediately pick up his fully guaranteed $19 million fifth-year option. And for 3 glorious weeks, it actually works. They start 3-0. He throws for over 300 yards twice. He's running in 5 touchdowns in his first 4 games. People are whispering that the Jets were the problem all along. But then, the NFL reality check hits. McCaffrey gets hurt. The offensive line completely falls apart and starts leaking pressure. The Panthers lose 7 of 8 games. To make matters worse, Darnold fractures his scapula and misses over a month of action. Going into 2000, the guy taken number 1 overall in Sam's own draft class, Darnold loses the preseason battle for the starting job. He suffers a severe high ankle sprain, lands on injured reserve before week 1, and helplessly watches the team spiral so badly they fire the head coach. Even though he comes back in November and plays decently down the stretch, going 4-2 as a starter and posting the best interception rate of his career, the league had already slammed the gavel. Former top pick, former starter, certified undeniable bust. Most guys fade into obscurity right there. They take their guaranteed money, they quietly retire, and they disappear into real estate or broadcasting. Sam didn't. In 2000-2003, he swallows his pride, accepts his reality, and signs a backup deal with the San Francisco 49ers. He grinds it out and beats out Trey Lance just to hold a clipboard. But for the first time in his entire career, he's submerged in a genuine winning culture. He learns from offensive genius Kyle Shanahan. He watches Brock Purdy operate with surgical precision. He learns how structure, elite preparation, and a functioning running game can actually protect a quarterback's psyche. And that critical year of rehab leads us to the Minnesota Vikings in the spring of 2024. Kirk Cousins leaves for Atlanta, so the Vikings sign Sam to a cheap, 1-year, $10 million bridge deal to simply keep the seat warm for their shiny new rookie JJ McCarthy. But then, training camp disaster strikes. McCarthy suffers a season-ending knee injury in the preseason. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the keys to a playoff-caliber roster are handed right back to Sam Darnold. And what does he do with the best supporting cast of his life? He puts on an absolute clinic. In his debut, he goes 19 of 24. Pure methodical efficiency. Over the first 4 games, he throws 11 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. By December, he's operating at an MVP level. He leads the Vikings to an incredible 14 wins. He posts career highs across the entire board. Over 4,300 passing yards, 35 touchdowns, a passer rating over 100, and he earns his very first trip to the Pro Bowl. It is the feel-good story of the decade. But, like always, the NFL is a cruel master that demands perfection in January. In the wild card round against the Los Angeles Rams, the ghosts of his past return. The offensive line absolutely implodes. Darnold gets sacked 9 brutal times for 82 lost yards. He throws a pick that gets returned for a touchdown. The 1-4 win. Vikings get bounced from the tournament in one agonizing night on their home field. And immediately, the talking heads just move the goalposts. Now, the narrative isn't that he's a regular season bust. It's that he's a guy who chokes under the playoff pressure. So, despite the magical run, the Vikings let him walk into free agency. Which brings us to the final spectacular chapter, the ultimate, undeniable redemption. In free agency, the Seattle Seahawks look at the tape and bet the house. They sign him to a massive 3-year, $100.5 million contract. The old guard in Seattle is gone. Geno Smith is gone. DK Metcalf is gone. Tyler Lockett is gone. It's Darnold's team now, armed with a stifling physical defense and a passing game built entirely around timing with Jackson Smith-Njigba and veteran Cooper Kupp. And man, he was magnificent. Week 9, under the primetime lights against Washington, he goes 13 for 13 with 4 touchdowns in the first half alone. Literally not a single incompletion. By December, Seattle is an absolute juggernaut. They shut out Minnesota, his former team, for their first shutout in a decade. They pull off an impossible 15-point fourth-quarter comeback against the Rams, winning in overtime on a gutsy 2-point conversion. By Week 18, they walk into Levi Stadium, beat Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers 1-3, and secure the number 1 seed in the NFC. Darnold does something only Tom Brady had ever done in the history of the sport: lead 2 different teams to back-to-back 1-4 win seasons. Then comes the postseason, the crucible where he was supposed to melt, the divisional round against San Francisco. On the opening kickoff, Seattle houses it for a touchdown, and Lumen Field absolutely explodes. They force 6 turnovers on defense. Sam is surgically efficient, completing 12 of 17 passes, and they completely obliterate the 49ers 4-1-6. The next week, the NFC Championship against the LA Rams, the exact same team that sacked him 9 times the year before. The team he threw 4 picks against in the regular season. His absolute kryptonite. How does he respond when the pressure is the highest? With the greatest game of his entire life, he throws for 346 yards, completes 25 of 36 passes, and accounts for 3 total touchdowns, spreading the ball flawlessly to 7 different receivers. As the fourth quarter drains away, the demons of his past finally permanently lose their grip. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't shrink. Seattle wins 3-1-2-7. Sam Darnold is going to the Super Bowl. And the Hollywood scriptwriters couldn't have written a more poetic, unbelievable ending. Super Bowl 60, Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, February 8th, 2026. Who is standing across the field waiting for him? The New England Patriots, the very franchise that tortured him, the team that turned him into a national punchline, the team that made him see ghosts. But he wasn't a terrified 21-year-old kid anymore. He was a hardened, battle-tested veteran who had survived the absolute worst this league had to offer. The game itself is a brutal, tense, throwback defensive slugfest. Seattle's defense is destroying Patriots quarterback Drake May, sacking him 6 times. At halftime, there isn't a single touchdown on the board. It's just 9-0 Seattle off field goals. But early in the fourth quarter, Darnold finally breaks the dam. He gets a short field, drops back in the pocket, reads the Patriots' complex coverage perfectly, and fires a 16-yard absolute dagger into the end zone to tight end A.J. Barner. 1-9-0. Seattle's defense slams the door shut with a late pick 6. When the clock hits 0 and the confetti finally rains down from the California sky, it's Seahawks 29, Patriots 13. Think about the sheer magnitude of that journey for a second. From being thrown to the wolves in New York, to being labeled a total, irredeemable bust. From literally seeing ghosts on national television, to being discarded by Carolina, to holding a clipboard in San Francisco, to standing on the podium, hoisting the Lombardi Trophy as a Super Bowl champion. Sam Darnold didn't just beat the Patriots that night. He beat the entire unforgiving narrative of his life, and he forced the entire football world to finally, permanently, put some respect on his name.